The following Friday, Krista started training. It felt a little strange to begin at the end of the week. When she had asked Jonah about it, he gently reminded her that his methods were not to be questioned. Krista had figured it didn't matter what day he decided to train her. As soon as she finished Jonah's little session, she could go out and find her husband. Fifth Avenue held a different appearance under Friday's afternoon sun. Skyscrapers still towered around her, but she wasn't trapped beneath them. "Hi." Krista jumped and took in a quick gasp. She recognized the voice, the same shady tone she'd shared multiple conversations with over the past week. The man who had agreed to help her track down her estranged husband. Good grief. She turned on him in one solid movement. "I wish you wouldn't do that." "I would like you to know," Jonah said proudly. "This is the fourth time this week I have been able to sneak up on you." Krista rolled her eyes. "I'll document it in my diary." "You know, what you lack in awareness, you make up in sarcasm." Lucky me," she responded dryly. He acted different, light, easy, and not so mysterious. Deep and dark must be an after-hours persona for him, a regular Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Krista didn't want to think about the atrocities Mr. Hyde committed in the dark. "So, what are you going to teach me?" "I'm going to teach you how to catch your husband. Then I'll tell you where to find him." Krista sidestepped a trash receptacle as they walked side by side down Fifth Avenue. Jonah wasn't the type of person who offered his help without a price. He had the makings of a businessman, and businessmen only sought a profitable outcome. She made it a point to cut through the political nonsense and jump straight to business. "How much is that going to cost me?" Jonah walked ahead of her. "Don't worry, we'll discuss it later." Krista let it go. So much for that try. It wasn't worth the time to argue with him. She followed him to the coffee shop where they talked 2 nights ago. The idea of accepting help without first hashing out the exact terms of the deal didn't sit right with her. It was like she'd agreed to purchase a house without knowing the monthly payment. Unfortunately, as Jonah pointed out, he held an obvious advantage simply because he wasn't the one who needed help. So what are we here to discuss? Ground rules? What are the ground rules? Let's get inside. He unlocked the gate, pushed the plastic out of the way, and opened the door. Krista ducked under the plastic sheeting and stepped over the threshold. The 4 garage lights had been removed. No extension cords hung from the ceiling. The magic of electricity allowed rows of fluorescent lighting to click to life at Jonah's command. Tables and chairs were pushed neatly to the side. The new design left the majority of the floor open. Her steps slowed as she took it all in. Jonah put a lot of work into opening the floor. He made enough space for them to move around comfortably. When she agreed to this, Krista assumed he intended to give her a quick verbal lesson. But he'd set this up for something far more extensive. It was more than she had expected. Jonah closed and locked the door. Just like last time, they stood hidden from the rest of the city behind a thick tarp. "First, I never get involved." Krista furrowed her brow. "Involved with what?" "People, cases, or clients. Anything I do is considered business and nothing but business." He grinned with just the right amount of charm to catch her eye. "So don't fall in love with me because it will never work out." "Oh, brother," she muttered. Any further comment escaped her. Krista only stared, brow scrunched at the sheer stupidity of his statement. Did he think that was a possibility? Jonah was probably more dangerous than Christian. Did he see the word idiot stamped on her forehead? A relationship was the last thing she wanted. The last 6 months of her life had been dedicated to tracking down that mistake. "I'll keep it in mind just in case I feel a spark," she said into the silence, weary of his eyes on her. The grin had gone. "Second, we play by my rules." "I figured that." "What else?" "Here, I'm going to teach you how to be more aware of your surroundings. You're going to learn how to fight, how to defend yourself, how to act in different situations, how to sneak around, and the importance of a backup plan. Also, later on, we'll move into advanced training where you'll familiarize yourself with a variety of weapons." Krista cleared her throat. His speech made it sound like she had signed up for the military. "How long is this going to take?" "That's up to you. It all depends on how fast you learn." This was more than she expected. "When I learn all this, you're going to tell me where I can find Christian?" Jonah nodded. That's all she wanted to know. All right, sounds good. What's first? Instruction, Jonah answered. Don't be impatient, and don't let your obsession with your husband cloud your judgment. Krista's defenses kicked in. I'm not obsessed, and I wasn't trying. The sentence trailed off as he held up his hand. Trust me, I know what I'm doing, and I don't want a lot of questions. This is going to be a lot of work. If you want to get the upper hand on your husband, then you're going to have to dedicate yourself to learning. Fine, I'm dedicated. Krista wanted to get started. If she buckled down and learned whatever Jonah wanted to teach, she could get back to her search for Christian. She'd play by his rules for a couple of weeks. She'd get the information, and this would all be over. What do I need to learn? Jonah walked to the center of the room. Okay, we'll start with the basics. He circled to face her again. Come here. Krista walked to the center of the room, stood an arm's length away from him, and waited for his next instruction. Jonah put his arms up and balled his fists, ready for a fight. I want you to hit me. Krista laughed, unsure if she heard him right. What? Hit me. Krista arched her brow. She must have heard him correctly since it sounded like he said the same thing again. She slowly shook her head. Hit him? She'd never hit anybody, not since she was little, and then it amounted to childish arguments with her brothers, which happened to turn into physical battles. Jonah held her gaze. What's wrong? You want me to hit you? Krista lowered her eyes to his two fists balled up and held even with his chest. Did she look like some kind of fool? What kind of lesson was he trying to teach? No, thanks. I've already had this lesson. Jonah glared. No pity in his eyes this time. Forget about all that and listen to me. Now throw a punch. Come on. He waved his hand in a gesture to hurry her. Let's have it. Krista shrugged and swung her fist in a light, controlled motion that tapped Jonah on the upper part of his arm below his shoulder. Jonah dropped his guard. What was that? He glanced at his arm as if she had playfully brushed a fly from his sleeve. Krista threw her hands in the air. Well, I don't want to hurt you. You don't want to hurt me, he repeated, incredulously. If someone asked me to hit them, that person has opened themselves up to a certain amount of pain. I've never tried to hurt anyone, she argued, especially someone I barely know. Jonah let out a long sigh, relaxed his defensive stance, and ran his fingers through his short brown hair. This is going to be a long day. His attitude seeped under her skin. Why do I have to hit you? She already broke one of Jonah's ground rules by questioning his methods. Why doesn't matter? I don't see the problem. Most people would jump at an open opportunity like that. Well, I'm not most people. Clearly. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Krista took in a deep breath to calm her rising anger. What right did he have to stand there and judge her? He didn't know anything about her until they'd met on the darkened corner of the Upper West Side almost a week ago. You don't know me, she said. I know enough, he countered. In the last 5 days, I've spoken with you enough times to form an opinion of your personality. What do you think you know? You won't hit me because you're afraid to. Krista's mouth dropped open. I'm not afraid. Yes, you are, he countered. You're afraid to hit me because you're afraid I'll hit you back. Damn him, and damn his ability to read her. She hadn't realized it until he brought his fists up, but she was scared to get hit. Christian saw this too, Jonah said. His tone forced her to look at him. Saw what? Krista's pulse quickened. She hated when Jonah tried to explain Christian's personality to her as if she hadn't lived with him for years. Weakness. One word and Krista's hand clenched into a fist at her side. Jonah walked a thin line. I'm not weak. Yes, you are. Jonah made his conclusion with a smirk. You're not willing to defend yourself, and that's weak. She found holes in his logic. How is throwing a punch at someone defending yourself if that person didn't hit you first? Jonah stepped closer, stood taller, and tried to intimidate her. How many times did you defend yourself after Christian hit you first? How many punches did you throw then? She locked her jaw, her right hand still balled in a tight fist at her side. I don't need to listen to this. It's because you know I'm right. It's because you're a jackass. Maybe so, but nobody uses me as a punching bag. I'm surprised, especially if you run around asking people to hit you. I only ask people who don't have the strength to fight. Krista wanted nothing more than to wipe the smirk off his face. Her fist shook at her side and her jaw clamped so tight it made her teeth hurt. Is this how you plan to raise your daughter? Jonah asked. Are you going to raise Alexis to be weak, a nice little toy for her husband to beat on? Don't talk about my daughter. Krista barked out the words. You don't know anything about her. Jonah's voice never rose. I don't know her personally. I'm sure she's young and impressionable, and young children learn from their parents. He took another step closer. I know she takes in everything, and when she sees her mother getting the hell beat out of her by her father, it leads a young girl to be afraid of men. Krista held her ground as he took another step. Shut up. She's going to grow up to be just like you, he continued, letting herself get abused, following in the footsteps of her mother. Hell, if you wait long enough, maybe Christian will have the chance to show little Alexis what it's like. A man who beats his wife will most likely strike a child as well. He won't get the chance, Krista shouted. Who's going to stop him? If you can't protect yourself, how can you protect someone else? Krista had enough. Shut up. Jonah refused to quit. It's pitiful the way you... Her fist swung in a blur. She didn't even know it happened until the sharp pain exploded in her knuckles. The right hook caught him across the left side of his jaw. It cut his words off and knocked Jonah back. Krista quickly backed away. Her knuckles throbbed. The pain traveled up her arm in an explosive wave. Her eyes fell on Jonah as she clutched her hand close to her abdomen. He quickly regained his balance as he casually stroked his jaw. Krista ignored the pain in her hand as she watched him. She hoped she had hurt him. The coffee shop fell into a rough silence, filled only with the sounds of their haggard breaths. She had shut him up. Shit, Jonah breathed. I wasn't ready for that. Krista rubbed her hand over her throbbing knuckles. You weren't ready, she said. You asked me to hit you. Yeah, but I wanted you to hit me when I asked you, not 10 minutes after. She kept a keen eye on the man she'd nearly knocked to his knees. There were 10 steps between them and roughly 5 steps between her and the door. She hoped if he tried to retaliate, she'd be able to run outside and in the presence of witnesses before he got to her. She stole a glance at the door. That was the plan, anyway. Krista backed up another 2 steps. I'm sorry. For what? He asked. I did ask for it. There for a minute, I didn't think you had it in you. It took a lot of provoking. We're going to have to work on that, too. Jonah continued to rub his jaw as he leaned lazily against the counter. How did it feel? It felt great. Krista stopped rubbing her knuckles. He had provoked her on purpose. Krista didn't care. It freed her to hit him in the mouth. She felt powerful in the silence that followed, to know she possessed the strength to throw the punch. It offered the confidence she needed to throw a second one if he asked for it. You have a decent right hook, Jonah praised. He pushed away from the counter and walked back to the center of the floor. Now, he motioned for her to come closer. Just like that, I want you to hit me again. Krista stood 2 steps away from the door. What? Are you serious? He nodded. Can I wait until my hand recovers? She asked, while she flexed her sore fingers. Don't worry. Jonah pointed to the floor in front of him. You won't be lucky enough to land a second one. Krista smiled. Jonah certainly had a healthy supply of confidence. Oh yeah. She made her way back to the center of the coffee shop, stopping no more than an arm's length away from him. We'll see about that,